Hello, and welcome to the Blizzard Watch podcast. I don't know why I sound like I'm doing a Halloween thing. Give me a sec here. Okay, that's better. Hi, I'm Matt. I'm the host. With me this week, sorry. With me this week are my two astonishing co-hosts, Joe Perez and Liz Harper. How are you guys doing?
You notice how Matt has two modes when he introduces the podcast. He either goes into like the Vincent Price, like grave serious, like old school horror introduction, or he turns into a 1940s prospector.
Take away the words when introducing the podcast, and that's just accurate. Like that's me. Either I'm the horror show host from like, the creature feature type thing. Like if you've ever seen the original Fright Night, the Roddy McDowell character, either I'm that or I'm Yosemite Sam. I don't. Sometimes I'm a Scottish person who becomes a Russian person very quickly, but I don't know what the deal is with that. But regardless, here we are. I think we're going to spend at least some time talking about the Diablo 4 open beta over the weekend because that happened, and I know Liz and I were playing pretty continuously. I don't know about Joe.
I unfortunately got waylaid by a lot of work, so I didn't get to play. And this is me being very angry about this because I wanted to play so badly.
So in order to give you some stuff to talk about before we jump into 35 minutes of gushing about Diablo 4, I figured we'd mention first up that Zul'Gurub items have been brought back, ones that have not existed since, I want to say, Cataclysm.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've all been a lot of them can be crafted now. As if patch 10.0.7 of World of Warcraft, the Dragonflight patch, you can go to Zul'Gurub. There's a kind of weird thing you have to do. Like you have to run the dungeon. You get a kind of Bijou, I believe it's called, and then you have to kill the bosses.
Fragmented Hakari Bijou and Shattered Hakari Bijou. Yep.
Kill a bunch of bosses, then go kill the main boss. Then you can go down when he puts the thing in the spirit realm. Instead of going to kill him, you run downstairs and get the other half of it that combined to the perfected Bijou or what have you. And then you can go and craft all this different stuff. Since I know you guys are transmog hogs, like myself, I shouldn't say it like I'm immune here. Also, I like transmog hog because it rhymes. I'm interesting that way. Anyway, anything you're looking forward here. I will point out that if you're trying to get Jinrock, you can't. It ain't there. It's the one weapon model that they did not put in because it's in the I want to say architecture, but it's not called architecture. It's archaeology. Yeah, it's archaeology.
Although the archaeology one is a different color, I think.
I don't know. I just know that
I have the OG one on my hunter because back in the olden days it was a hunter weapon. It absolutely was.
I mean, insofar as that hunters grabbed anything with attack power on it, yes.
Yeah. I don't know. I want to kind of go through and collect everything because I think there's a few things that I haven't looked at my list of what's missing, but there are some things that I never got a chance to when I was at level. And I wouldn't mind going through and spending some time getting the holes in the collection filled.
Liz, have you looked into it? Seen anything you want?
I was never a huge fan of the Zul'Gurub sets, and also the other thing is I can only keep so many things in my brain at once, so many tasks. And I've been working on Anchorage lately, so you've got to collect those transmog sets. You can only do so much at a time.
Yeah, for myself, I was disappointed that you can't get a Jinrock. But they have pretty much everything else, including a lot of armor stuff that you couldn't get. You can't get anymore. So it gives me huge nostalgia for when we were running Anchorage actually, because we ended up running Zul'Gurub a lot to get ourselves geared up to go hit Anchorage. I think the two of them dropped pretty close togeted. I don't remember exactly.
Yeah, I think they did.
But I just remember my guild would split up into multiple groups to run Zul'Gurub, and then we'd convene and go run Anchorage. So yeah, definitely. There is actually there's a new model as well though. Did you guys see the Venom Reaver model?
Mm-mm.
I have not.
Okay, it's a polearm. If you've ever played a Warlock, you've probably gone to get the Hell Reaver polearm from the first dungeon in Hellfire Citadel dungeons. The first dungeon there's the big red flaming polearm called Hell Reaver. they now have a model that's green called Venom Reap that's going to be
Okay.
craftable in Zolgarup. It's
Huh.
the same. It's the same polearm, but it's green instead of red.
I mean, I just like the entire concept of the ancient plans, right? Like, I think that's really cool as a concept.
I think it's an interesting way to bring stuff back too. Yeah.
Yeah, and also that model of Venom Reaver, I think I have the red one, the original, the OG, and now I have to go get the green one because I can't not have it now.
Yeah. You're welcome. I've given you an obsession. Was it? I remember years ago, a couple cartoons said, you got me a figure print of my character from World of Warcraft. Yeah, well, don't seem so happy about it. I thought this would be a nice gift. Gift. You just gave me a second job, which I had to quit previously because it was killing me. Because once you get the figure print, you have to look at your transmog and you're like, oh my god, no. I cannot have that printed, and it's still the same case, even though I don't even know if fingerprints even still exist.
Technically, they do, but I mean, also I hate to say,
3D print it yourself.
I was gonna say I've already 3D printed my character a couple times in different transmog because that's a thing you can do.
Yeah, I figured. But yeah, so there's the thing is too. I wanted to tell people this. It's not just there's a lot of patterns here. There's inscription ones that can allow you to make various things. There's jewel crafting ones. There's leather working ones for a whole bunch of leather stuff that was in the original dungeon. So there's a bunch of different stuff. It isn't just plate and weapons. Although plate and weapons blacksmithing gets the lion's share of recipe. And I kind of feel like the fact that you can get a pitchfork of Mojo Madness, which is basically just the pitchfork. It's just the pitchfork of madness model, which, yeah. So, very cool. Overall, I think this is a really cool thing. I'm very happy they did it. They've been doing, I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but between this and the trading post and some of the trial of style stuff that came out when the expansion first dropped, they've actually put in a lot of new stuff that's fixing these kind of holes. I remember noticing, for a long time, I had warriors, the highest level of the warrior tier 10 from Ice Crown Citadel, and the set didn't have boots. And then they put the boots in finally in Legion, because they put in that dungeon with a bunch of different bosses from a bunch of different expansions. But then it didn't have a belt, and it didn't have a belt from the time it was introduced until this expansion, because they snuck the belt in Trial of Style stuff when the expansion dropped. And I went and got it, but I was like, I got it because I went to the trading post, and then I saw that there was a vendor there, so I checked on what that vendor had, and they were a trial style vendor, and I was like, I don't know why you're here, but cool. And then I saw the belt, and they also put in models that were never even used. On that vendor, there's swords that were in the files back,
but never actually given as loot. Yeah.
Yeah, so they've been doing a lot of that between this latest thing with Zul'Gurub is great, but they've been doing stuff like this before, and it seems to be something that they've been working on in the background, and I don't know why they're not making more of a deal out of it. I feel like they should be telling people about this more than they are. I
have a feeling that it's sneaking it in as they can, because otherwise what's going to wind up happening is you're going to have a subset of people that are going to start beating the door down for everything that they never got or was data mined as a potential thing. And I agree, I think it's a great thing, and I think they should be praised for it. But I also understand maybe not making such a big deal out of it, because they're probably just adding them as they can when they can. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, I have no idea what the order of operations is for it, but yeah, it's absolutely just I've been wanting some of these models since Ulduar, when they were supposed to be in Ulduar and then they didn't show up, and I was like, why did you not? You gave that to this mob in Ulduar. Why can't I have it? So yeah, but I think that pretty much covers that topic. So I don't think. We can talk about the Turbulent Timeways. Have you guys gotten a chance to do that yet? Because it just happened today as we're recording this.
No, I haven't, but I'm definitely going to.
I got home and now I'm on the podcast, so no.
Yeah, much the same. I've actually had a really bad day health-wise. So anyway, the thing about the Turbulent Timeways is for the next 6 weeks, guys, starting now and going well into April. I think it ends it ends the first or second week of May. But I'm not great at doing calculations in my head like that.
It's a solid 6 weeks of time walking.
Yeah, and the item level of the case you get for doing it has been adjusted upwards. It's not normal mode, it's heroic mode gear. So it's still Vault of the Incarnates, but it's heroic. So it goes between, I believe, 402 to 411 gear can drop from the case you do. So if you do all 6 weeks, you will get 6 pieces of gear from heroic, which is not. I don't think that's bad. I think that's a pretty solid.
No, it's really
reward.
nice.
Yeah.
And I believe you have to run 4 time walking dungeons for the quest. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
I just took the quest.
Yep.
So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So 4 time walking dungeons every week for the next 6 weeks, and you will get 6 pieces of heroic gear. I mean, I really think that's great. And I mean, it's great for alts because time walking is not super hard. Even if you have an undergeared alt, you can do it. And the other thing is that I was hearing this afternoon is that you can run alts less than 70 through here and do the quest and get the reward.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's like if you haven't, you can have the gear waiting.
My only gripe, and I was talking about this the other day in Guild, and we were doing some like Mythic Pluses. I love time walking, but I have a weird, I don't want to say hatred of it, but like, I'm trying to think of how to phrase this. As a healer, there is a unique, I don't like this portion of it where there's content you can run that you cannot remove debuffs that the game thinks you should be able to remove because things have gotten moved around for healers so much that that gets a little bit weird. That's the only part of time walking I don't like. Everything else I love. I love time walking otherwise.
I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, and Padilla in chat, yes, Burning Crusade dungeons are the worst for that, especially as a resto shaman. Like the fact that I have to like spec and do a totem specifically to remove poison, but now I can't remove disease anymore is a huge problem. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that, like when we had the Mage Tower come back and people were trying to do it back in near the end of Shadowlands, a lot of it turned off a lot of things that people were basically relying on now, like the Covenant powers. They didn't work. And it's like, that's my entire playstyle, man. My entire playstyle is based around that Covenant power. You can't take that away from me and then just expect me to figure out how to be able to do this on the fly. So yeah, I don't. We're going to get to see that again fairly soon because Legion is one of the expansions that's coming. I think pretty much every expansion.
Yeah, we're doing every expansion. This week is Cataclysm. Next week, Mists of Pandaria, then Warlords of Draenor, then Legion, then Burning Crusade, then Wrath of the Lich King, which is a weird order to do them in, but that's the order we're doing them in. So there you go.
Yeah, and except for Battle for Azeroth, which I don't think has any time walking yet.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. So just we're going through all of the expansions that have time walking. So most of them. Also, a correction: the quest to do this requires you to run 5 time walking dungeons. I believe I said 4 earlier.
I thought it was 4 too. Okay.
It's still not a bunch.
Yeah, I can't find the quest, but yeah. All right. That's not terrible. It's still only like one more dungeon a day for a week, and it's skipping. And
I mean, I think mostly time walking dungeons are pretty straightforward, pretty quick. Certainly compared to like a Mythic Plus, which can be, a really time and energy intensive thing. Even if they're like a quick 30-minute thing, they always feel like a big ordeal because it's a lot of focus is required.
Yeah, I definitely don't think that's the case for time walking. And again,
time walking you can kind of breeze through.
I mean, and considering it's a piece of gear that will be between 402 to 411. You can get the heroic version of the axe off of Razageth. I mean, you may not get it, but you could. So, there's a lot of impetus, in my opinion, to go do this. I'm definitely going to be running it as soon as I get a chance to. Like you guys said, what is time? You don't hurt me anymore. So yeah, I wanted to talk about something that I had missed that you caught, Liz. We've got the Year of the Wolf announcement, which happened last week. Which, I mean, when was last week again? That was just before the breaking of the seals, right? I don't remember, but Year of the Wolf.
Last week was at least like 3 years ago, I think.
It does feel like it, yeah. It's not like a really weird Doppler effect as you're getting stretched out as you're like powering forward through time. But yeah, go ahead and talk about the Year of the Wolf, please, so I can sit here and try and understand what's going on in my
life. So Hearthstone announced the Year of the Wolf, and in case you don't follow Hearthstone, every year is a literal year, and also a year in Hearthstone, which always has a theme of some sort. This year is the year of the wolf, and we will have kind of the standard layout of 3 expansions, 3 battleground seasons, and so on. But we also get a new core set rotation. The core set in Hearthstone is basically a set of cards that everyone has. It doesn't matter if you've bought anything. It doesn't matter if you've done anything. Everyone logs in, has access to this core set of cards just straight off, which I think is really great. They added this last year or the year before. This is pretty new, but I think it's a great way for everyone to kind of keep a similar power level to each other because everyone has this stuff. They are coming in with a bunch of buffs to older cards because obviously the game's getting up there in years and the power curve has kind of increased over time like it inevitably does with any game. So some old cards are getting buffed where it's an interesting time because it's when everything's kind of changing up. Everything's kind of shifting a little bit. They're also making the tradable keyword evergreen. So you're going to see tradable on more cards. That is a keyword that allows you to, if you draw a card, you can trade it in and get a different card out of your deck. So that can give you some nice flexibility. If you happen to draw that 8 mana card on turn 1 and it's not really useful for you.
I wanted to ask you something, Liz.
Go.
You talked about the core set. The year of the wolf, what last year was the year of the Hydra? Am I correct on this?
I don't remember.
Okay, well, basically what I'm asking is, it says when I was doing research on it, it says that they rotate certain cards out of the core set and then other cards go rotated in. Do we know yet which ones are going to do that, or have they not said yet?
Yes. Okay. We have I believe we have the complete list of cards that are rotating in. What we don't have is when exactly this is going to happen, except it's probably going to happen sometime in April when the new expansion goes live, which we also don't have a specific date for.
All right. But we do know what's going to be going out and coming in, so that's cool.
Yes, it looks like 70 cards are being swapped out of the core set for new cards. So I mean that's a pretty significant change. A change like this is always going to kind of shake up the meta and just make it, it refreshes everything. It makes the game feel, kind of new, kind of different. And that'll last all year because this is going to be the core set for the entire year of the wolf.
So the year of the wolf starts when the expansion drops?
Yes.
So it'll be from sometime in April to next April?
Yeah.
All right, cool. This is me trying to host a podcast. Sounds like I know what I'm doing. You mentioned... Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, part of the problem is we don't know exactly when it's going to start and exactly when it's going to end because they don't announce those dates. But it'll start when the expansion comes out, and it'll end when you're probably right on. It's probably going to end next April after we've gone through our 3 expansion cycle and we start over with the new expansion.
Cool.
I think that made sense.
No, it did. So we just talked about how you have a really good question here about patch 10.0.7, but we just talked about how all 3 of us have basically been super swamped and hadn't gotten a chance to play much in 10.0.7.
I mean, I have played some. Have either of y'all gone to the Zskera
Vaults? Yes, I have.
Joe has. I have not.
Because I think I haven't done as much there as I would like, but I think the Zskera Vaults are really interesting.
It's a cool idea. I mean, even though I haven't gotten to do it yet, I like the idea of it just fine. One of the things I really do like about Dragonflight quite a bit is how much different stuff there is.
Yeah.
Like if you don't necessarily jibe with this thing, I mean, granted, if you don't do them at all, you won't get the ring, and the ring is something you should probably want to have. It's a good ring. But if I really don't want to do it, I can just avoid it. I won't get the ring, but by the time the next raid comes out, I'll get better rings pretty quickly. So it's not like you must have this ring to do this stuff.
And I'm not going to talk about the healing feedback loop because I don't want it to get nerfed before I get my hands on it. Okay.
Well, you probably shouldn't say that then.
I think it was already nerfed once, but yes. The other thing is you can get the ring pretty easily, and you can even fully upgrade the ring pretty easily. It doesn't take a huge time commitment. Even though, like we've said, all of us have been really busy. I leveled 3 characters to level 25 in the Diablo 4 beta this past week. Yeah, but I've also, I've leveled 3 gems in my ring. I just have 1 level to go and I'll have it maxed out. So I'm even with the very little time play I have had. And I mean, the vaults themselves are just interesting. I think even if I had my ring totally maxed out and I didn't need any new gems or anything at all, I think I might go there every week anyway, because it's just an interesting place. You go in and, you've got to farm up, keys for the vault to open the different vaults. You go inside, you use your keys, and you unlock a different door in the vault. And who knows what's going to be behind that door? It could be anything. You could unlock it and the room is on fire. And you have to go and find something in another vault that will put out the fire or let you get into the fire. There was one I unlocked last week. I went inside and there's a rat with a chef's hat on, and you catch the rat and then you talk to the rat and try to convince the rat to give you this recipe. You're supposed to talk him into giving you his secret recipe. And you have to, every time you talk to him, he gives you a certain number of scraps of the recipe. And eventually you get enough that you have a recipe for deviled eggs, because obviously that's how you would get a recipe for deviled eggs. I mean, I don't know how else you would
They're
learn to
very
make
good deviled eggs.
Obviously, you would learn from a rat who has been locked in Neltharian's vault for thousands of years now, I guess.
Listen,
to work on that recipe.
If an immortal chef rat wants to teach me its secrets, I'm here for it.
But it's interesting and it's unexpected, and I really enjoy it. I wasn't sure how I was going to feel, oh god, another thing I have to farm over and over. But no, it's actually fun. It's farmable content that I would just do.
I really like it. There's only 2 questions that, and I didn't really look too far into it. One, it's only solo content, right? You can't go and do it with friends. Yes.
Correct.
Okay, that is one thing I wish you could do. Is I wish you could go in there with a couple friends and may have it be a little more social. So I think exploring it is fun, but I kind of understand why with the keys and stuff. And 2, do we know if the mobs that greet you rotate?
We do not. I mean, this is only the 2nd week the vault has been open. So
when you go in there, if there are spiders again or not, because a mutual friend of Matt and mine has severe arachnophobia and just couldn't do the vaults. Couldn't do the vaults because of it, right? So I'm kind of curious if that's the case or not.
Knowing her luck, there'll be more rats. I mean, spiders, spider rats,
make it even worse.
But at this point, I've been as nice as I can.
Go ahead.
I've got to talk about Diablo.
Just do the thing.
Okay.
I'll be back. Don't worry.
Well, first off, I'm going to talk about druids. The Open Beta weekend, one of the characters I played was kind of a mixed bag. I felt like the druid really feels like they kind of need a buff. Just in terms of just survivability, because I had a lot of fun on the druid, and I felt like I had cool abilities that were visually distinctive and had a lot of fun to them. But it definitely feels like you get hurt pretty badly.
See, the thing with the druid, I played a druid to 25, and I have no feelings about the druid. I'm personally not usually a druid player in Diablo. Back in Diablo 2, I didn't really go for the druid, but everyone was saying how terrible the druid was, and I'm like, okay, now I have to play it to 25 just to be contrary, because everyone's saying it's hard to level, and it felt a little squishy. I agree. But also, I didn't feel like it was nearly as bad as people were saying it was. People were saying it's really hard, that it's just not powerful. And I didn't really feel that. I felt it was kind of a middle of the road class.
Yeah, I honestly, pretty much all my concerns are survivability based. I felt like classes I played 2 barbarians to 25 because
of course.
Then I played the druid to I think 16. And I played the sorceress to a solid 13 or 14, and I played the rogue up to 13 or 14. And keep in mind that means I only really know the barbarian at the max level in the beta.
Well.
But for when I was playing the druid, I felt mostly like it was survivability oriented, that was the big issue. Like a rogue has a lot more options for getting in and out of combat. They can go in and they can do the close up damage, or they can jump out and use range damage. And it's very fluid, and you can use your weapon imbues and so forth. Although you don't actually get those until
pretty
late. Yeah.
yeah.
So
Well, and we're talking late in the beta where
Yeah.
leveling only went to 25. The actual game is max level of 100. So we're really just seeing the beginning of this.
yeah, you're seeing the tip. Like this is just the pointy bit of it. But I do feel like, I think each class kind of like I think you're the one that said this. The Necro seems to get their stuff like immediately. Like,
Yeah, they do. And
like immediately front loaded. Here's all the tools. Whereas the Barbarian, I felt like by the time I hit 20, I had gotten everything except the one thing that I couldn't get because it doesn't actually allow you to go to the place to unlock it.
yeah, the Druid has the same problem in the beta.
Yeah.
They can't. Every class in Diablo 4 has kind of a special feature that's just for them. And Druids and Barbarians could not unlock theirs in the beta because the beta is only this first zone of the game and you had to do a quest in a different zone. So didn't get to fully test some of this. And I think that's also, certainly with the Druid, that's part of the reason the Druid feels a little weaker because most classes, they get to level 15 and they get their special thing.
Yeah.
And Druids get to level 15 and you get a quest to go get your special thing, but you can't go get your special thing that would buff you up.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't feel the lack of it too much on the Barbarian, but I definitely did feel it on the Druid.
The interesting thing about the Druid, and you wrote a post about classes in Diablo 4 that you pointed out, Druid is they're like this ultimate hybrid class. And because they can go into melee, they can be tanky, they can be spellcasters, they can be a pet class, like whatever you want to do. You want to do anything in the game, you can do it on a Druid. But I feel like you have to be a successful Druid, I feel like you can't specialize, which I'm kind of getting the vibe from a lot of people who tried Druid out this weekend that it's like, okay, I want to be a Druid. I want to be a werewolf all the time, or I want to be a bear all the time.
Yeah,
because that's what you did. That's what you did in Diablo 2, right?
Yeah.
That's not really how this plays. No.
Yeah, I tried a bunch of different builds. I just went in and I try this, and okay, that's not feeling good. I try that. That's not feeling good. And it feels like you kind of have to, mix and match. What I finally wound up doing was it's like, okay, my basic skill was a ranged casting thing where I threw like a wave of air at people. So I could do that from range and either pull things or attack things that were just really far away from me without running in. And then my active skill was I become a werewolf and slash things. And that was really fun. It's really fun to be a werewolf because about survivability, you can buff up your werewolf thing to where clawing people regenerates health. And a little later, you can pick up this, I want to call it battle cry, but that's not what it is. It's on a short cooldown, and it regenerates like 20% of your health instantly on like a 12 or 15 second cooldown. And it also regenerates some of your spirit, which is their kind of mana, their casting, their ability resource.
Yeah, their resource. Yeah.
And, kind of once I got this combo going, it's like, okay, I cast a couple of these spells from range, then I jump in as a werewolf, and I can kind of stay in combat pretty well because I'm healing myself when I'm slashing with the werewolf, and then I can use this cooldown to give me more spirit to do more slashing as a werewolf. And, at some point it started feeling pretty good. But, like, the first 5 or 6 levels felt really rough before I sort of started getting all of the tools. And, like, later, like after level 20, it started feeling pretty rough because I think at that point you're kind of getting behind the curve on power because you couldn't go get your special feature in the beta.
Yeah, I think there's definitely something to be said for that. I really noticed it on the Barbarian around the time I was saying level 25 is because they have the expertise feature, which is
right.
I was unlocking part of it because I was using weapons. So as you use a weapon, you've unlocked this level, but it's like it doesn't do me any good, guys. I don't get the expertise thing because I have to go train with that guy over there, and I can't get there. But other than that, I mean, I really liked the arsenal system for barbarians. I want World of Warcraft to steal it yesterday.
Could you tell us what the arsenal system is?
Yep.
Because I played a barbarian to like level 5.
Sure. Basically, when you start as a barbarian, unlike other classes, and I don't remember well enough to give you in detail on other classes, but the barbarian has 4 weapon slots. They have a big two-handed hammer that they're carrying around. They have 2 one-handed weapons, which can be swords, axes, maces, and then they've got the big slashing weapon, which can be a two-handed sword, a two-handed axe, or a polearm. And each of these has a different expertise. Like as you're leveling them, as you use them, they get more expertise. But the thing about the way that these work is certain abilities require like a slashing weapon. And if you don't, like say you're dual wielding 2 maces as your dual wield weapons, when you hit the ability that requires a slashing weapon, it will automatically switch to your two-hand sword or axe because that's your slashing weapon. But if you have a slashing weapon in your main hand and like say you have a sword and axe as a dual wielding, it'll keep using those. And it jumps between the abilities that it can use it. Like there's a certain abilities that just always use the big two-handed hammer because of like ground pound stuff. Anything like Hammer of the Ancients, which is the ability I was mostly focusing on. It hits the ground and throws a huge amount of damage around, and it's based on your two-hand mace. So you use these abilities, you don't have to do anything. It's not like you have to switch weapons using a macro or anything. The weapons will switch automatically based on what you're doing. So if you're using an ability that requires X kind of weapon, it will just switch to one. And you'll always have one because like your two-handed mace is just always you have a two-handed mace. That's one of your 4 weapons. So if anything that attacks the ground or does anything like that, you'll just automatically switch to it. And so that one's there, it's there, you don't have to worry about it. If you don't, say you went with 2 maces for your dual wielding, then you'll switch to your slashing two-hander to make sure that you've got slashing attacks. And you can vary it up, like you can go with 2 slashing weapons, like 2 swords, and then like a two-handed polearm. And some attacks will just switch to a two-hander. If they don't switch to your mace because they'll switch to your mace if you just don't, if that's the best weapon to switch to. But sometimes they'll switch to the polearm or an axe, whatever you've got equipped. And it just happens. Like you don't have to do anything. I love this because it allows you can pick and choose your loadout, and you can grab specific kinds of stuff on the weapons, and you've got 4 of them. I think everybody else uses like 1 or 2. Like rogues use 2. I think technically rogues use 3 because they have a bow.
Yes.
But in melee they use 2. But in melee, a barbarian is constantly switching between these weapons based on what abilities they're using. And it just happens, and it's just fluid, and it's really nice. I think this is one of the best ideas they've ever had. And I don't know how to compare it to other abilities. Like it's in a way it's similar to the druid shapeshifting, like where you're like, now I'm a caster, now I'm a werewolf, now I'm a bear, now I'm a werewolf, now I'm a caster again. It's similar to that in that you just when you use an attack that's got, slash with your claws, you just turn into a werewolf.
Yeah.
Like the ability, it's just in the ability. You don't have to like hit a button and be a werewolf. You're just like, I'm not a werewolf. Now I am. Now I'm not. Now I am. I like this idea of like, surprise face mauling. And it's similar to that, except instead of that, it's like surprise giant hammer, boom. So yeah, there is something really, really fun about this. I think one of the things I've been trying to figure out is how to explain Diablo 4 combat to people it's actually harder to describe to people who've played other Diablo games because it isn't any of them. It's not the original Diablo, which is just, if you ever go back and play that thing, it's like poke, 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 zap, zap, zap. Yeah. It's not Diablo. Yeah. It's not Diablo 2's very measured system. It's got moments that sort of feel that way. And I maintain that the boss fights in D4 feel like from the ones we've done. Keep in mind, we've only done a few, up to level 20, 25. But the ones we've gotten to see, they feel a little bit like the original Diablo 2 end boss type situation where you go fight Baal. He had a suite of abilities and you had to figure out how to counter them. And it's less, but it's not like Diablo 2, because in Diablo 2, the answer was, what's his main damage type? Okay, this guy does lots of lightning. Come up with a way around lightning. Get gear that drops lightning damage. Stuff like that. This one, it's much more like figure out how to use the area around the boss fight. And some of the fights I just got wrecked on. You did the Butcher, right?
If by did the butcher means I
got
saw
killed by
him
him.
and he killed me?
Yeah.
Yeah, in like 10 seconds? Yes, exactly.
I didn't know this, but the butcher can just randomly spawn in a dungeon.
Yeah, he can spawn anywhere he
anywhere.
wants at any time he wants. Yes.
So I was in a dungeon. I forget which one it was, but I remember the butcher appeared just before, like he spawned, and there was an invulnerability pillar. So I hit the invulnerability pillar, and I deluded myself into thinking I had a chance in this fight. And I kept him there for a good long time. Like he was dropping health. I thought, yeah, and then the pillar wore off, and he just destroyed me. Because you could literally.
Yeah, he's rough.
Yeah, he hits
That's
like
revenge.
a truck.
That's revenge for Diablo 1.
Might be Revenge of Diablo 3 at this point. That dude is like.
Well, don't forget because you. I mean, I think he was one of the first ones you like encounter in Diablo 1 as well.
Yeah, he's right up there near the front gate. Like in fact, I would say that the revelation of the butcher is one of the first moments where Diablo, the original Diablo, says, "Okay, you might have thought this was like a D&D game. I'm going to point to the walls now. You see all those dead people? He did that." And then he painted the walls with their bodies. That's the game you're playing now. And so yeah, he shows up and he is just a nightmare. But I mean, I felt like I could figure him out. I think Mitch and I had been having a discussion about it, and he called it we kind of called it like a Souls-like type thing, like a Soulsborne game. And I see why he said that. But the more I think about it, the more I think it's just harkening back to Diablo 2 in terms of having boss fights with a lot of stuff going on. Not that Diablo 3 didn't, but it's just a different way. But I mean, if you had to describe it, what would you say it is?
The boss fights,
just in general, like just combat in Diablo 4. Like, how would you describe it?
I mean, it feels very fluid, and it also feels like you have to think a little more about defense. It feels like at least compared to old Diablo games, you really have to think about dodging things, which, I mean, that's always a thing in any game. If there's like something bad coming, you have to dodge it, but there are really specific things where you have to pay attention to mechanics, and it seems like that happens in every boss fight. Certainly the world boss fight, and you just have to be kind of maybe more on your toes. I wonder if that's also why maybe the druid and barbarian feel a little squishier to people, because you're in melee all the time. And as we all know from playing World of Warcraft, melee is just a crappy place to be because the boss is right there trying to hit you all the time, and he's casting things and you have zero room to dodge it. Kind of like that. So it's harder to dodge. And I think maybe those two classes are feeling a little behind the power curve because of that. Because there's this bigger focus on not just, I'm going to go in with my sword and I'm going to hit this thing till it's dead, and more focus on, okay, I'm going to go in and hit this thing until it's dead, but I also have to think about where I'm positioned. I have to think about which spells I'm using. I have to remember all of my defensive abilities. It's not just about gearing up with the right armor. It's about going in. You have to think a little more strategically.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say you have to think super strategically, but it feels like there's more to think about in combat in Diablo 4.
It's noticeable if you punch it from the two difficulty modes that were available to test were like Adventurer and Veteran. Adventurer was literally like, hey, welcome to Diablo 4. Let me just walk you up here. Yeah, no, it's great. We're going to get you in there. And Veteran was more like, you've played a Diablo game before. You know how this works. And a lot of fights that I breezed through on Adventurer, when I set it to Veteran, suddenly it was a lot more... okay, you cannot stand here and let this hit you. You have to run around. You have to be alert to when potion drops happen, because if you don't pick those up, you're gonna have a problem here, because you're gonna need to use your potion to stay alive, and you'll end up with no potions. So you need to catch those potion drops when they happen. It's not like awful or like super hard. I definitely didn't get the frustration I get when I play a Souls, but I do feel like there's a little bit of the influence from there, which is fair because the original Diablo is definitely an influence on Dark Souls and Demon Souls. There's no way to argue Demon Souls. But also, we talked about the last week. We talked about it when we were talking about the alpha. The early access. We talked about the storytelling in the game. I got more of a chance to see more of it this time around, and in addition to the really like just dour and creepy and depressing stuff, there's a lot of really bizarre, funny stuff. Like what? Maybe not even funny is the right word, but just like the game is trolling you. There's a quest like called the Sealed Door, where you have to go up to a sealed door and prevent it from being opened. And, you basically, you get the quest when a guy comes up to you and he starts saying random nonsense. And you're just like, yeah, I'm used to this now. What can I help you with? And he's like, oh, you believe me. And like, yeah, I tend to, yeah. It's like, well, you have to go up here, and you go up there, and they're like, you have to kill these demons to fill this box with magic power or something with anima. I believe is actually even called anima. I was like, aha, not letting go of that word, Humbless. And so you get through that, and you go up to the sealed door, and the monster thing spawns. And as you beat it, it's like, no, I was to be the adventurer. And it's like, I don't know who's in there, but it feels an awful lot like this is like, we're going to hear more from, random door monster guy. And it's one of those quests where, again, it's not necessarily funny, and you could play the whole thing and just take it on face value. But if you were like, we've all played these games for years and years and years. It's like there's definitely that sense of a tongue in the cheek. Then there's like the quest. Have you done the quest with the sister in town, like trying to do the exorcism?
Yes. I think she is a great, interesting character.
Yeah, and the part where you have to go and convince the guy to give you the chalice, and he's like, and you just immediately bust out with, I know the Reverend Mother, just give me it. And it's just like it's like one of the things I've liked about Diablo for years now, for going back to Diablos 2 and 3. Is that a sense of your adventurer just not having time for this? That just look, I'm busy. Can we get on with this? And it's here, but it's like it's kind of illustrative of the people you're dealing with. Like after you're done with that whole quest chain, and this guy's like, you profaned a sacred artifact, and the sister's just like, oh, so you're gonna tell the Reverend Mother that you left your post and came up here, and you were tricked by this complete commoner to give them a chalice. Like, and you're standing there. I was playing my barbarian, so I'm standing there like, yeah, do I look like I deserve a holy relic to you? Yeah, it's really interesting. It's got a lot of light touches, while at the same time it is a despair based game. Again, we're only 20 levels in, but yeah, I did find that like there's like leavening in. There's like the world events are weird too. I didn't get another of those bastion deals, the kind of strongholdy things where you go in and I didn't get another one of those, but I did get one that was just basically like these monsters were like summoning things in to be killed inside of a circle, and you had to get them killed before they got into the circle, because if they died in the circle, then their blood would be sacrificed. And something bad. And I mean, it was just interestingly bizarre.
There are events going on in the world all the time, and you're just gonna like stumble into them as you wander around, because it's not just going around and killing hordes of monsters, though that's there too. There are also these world events like the one Matt was just talking about. You can run into events where it's like, oh, clear out this little fortress, and then a boss is gonna spawn in the middle and you kill them. There are these strongholds, which I believe I think these are fixed. I think the strongholds are fixed things, and I think kind of like a WoW dungeon, I think they're always 2 levels above you. So I wandered into one, like the first time I wandered into a stronghold, I was already level 25, and I was like, oh crap, these mobs are level 27. I've clearly wandered in over my head. Then I figured out later, this is stronghold. This is how they work. I really enjoy the strongholds because, you go in and you clear them out, and then like the world around them changes permanently after you do that. And it feels like you have had an impact on the world. And so far, all of them I've done, it feels like you've had a positive impact on the world, because like you've gone into an abandoned town and you've cleared out all these demons. And once you do, it's a town again. There's a place and there are people and there are vendors. So that is kind of nice that you can go in and do something positive in this horrible, horrible world of Sanctuary.
Yeah, that reminds me, the quest where the guy's brother like leads a group of merchants out into the woods, but they all get murdered.
Yes.
And then you catch up to him, and his brother's like, I have to bring him to justice. But when you get there, he's like, look, I just thought they were going to rob him. I didn't think they were going to murder him. And then they threatened to murder me. And you're like, and you can basically you just let him go. Like his brother's like, can you walk? We have to get out of here. You can't go back to town. They're all going to kill you. And I liked it just for the way that the brother was like, look, I realize that, this is wrong, but he's my brother. And you're like, yeah, just go. I like like how everybody involved knows this isn't going to go well, but you're like, this is what it is. And it's a little, all these little story quests. Like there's like one where I'm wandering around and I ended up in a basement somewhere, like a cellar near like the bandit encampment. And there's like, just what? Like, why am I here? And then like you get to the middle and there's like a bunch of like weird little bears like arranged around a circle, and then you get attacked by demons, of course, because it's Diablo. But it's just like, what was the point of that? And you never find out. You just walk in, weird stuff happens, you leave. They're not all like that, but that one really caught my eye.
I mean, there's so much to do, and the world it's just a big world, and yeah, I think it's pretty fun. I think the class balance, it feels a little weird, and I think part of that is we aren't seeing the whole game. Part of it is that they're still, like in World of Warcraft, they're tooting class balance like right down to the last minute of a release or a patch.
But as you point out, like the game goes up to level 100. We get to level 25. That's 1/4 of the leveling, and then after leveling, you hit the new Paragon system, which is all these abilities you can get, like the Paragon tiles. There's like one of the talent calculators I was using shows you everything. And I'm like sitting there going, dude, I'm getting to level 20, 25 if I'm lucky. You're showing me Paragon tile stuff. I'm not going to be getting there. It's not even open. So yeah, but it is pretty wild. At this point, though, we should probably, you have something to say, so you should finish, and then we should try to move on to one email so Joe can get to talk again.
I do want to say a little bit about the Necromancer in Diablo 4, since we talked a lot about the Druid, and the Necromancer was also only available this past weekend, and it's one of those fan favorite classes. I think the general opinion of the Necromancer is that it is super overpowered, wildly, insanely overpowered. But I think a lot of that comes down to it gets its big class ability at level 1, and its big class ability is to have a whole pile of skeletons following you around and killing things for you. Starting at level 1, you can already have 4 skeletons that like hang out and, stand between you and the monsters and hit them with swords.
I think Corey made a good point, too, in talking about the Necromancer, was that in a world where so many people have died, the Necromancer is just like, a kid at a candy store, like, more dead people. There is definitely, outside of the lore aspect of it, which I definitely think is there, there is just a lot of raw material for the Necromancer to be
yeah. But the interesting thing about the Necromancer is it's so tied into its, the pet class aspect of it, of having these skeletons with you. And so like at level 1, you can only summon like one type of skeleton, but as you level up, you can control which type of skeletons you summon. At certain levels, you unlock new types of skeletons. At level 20, you can summon a golem, which is a big horrifying thing that is, horrifying. Worse than the skeletons. And it's interesting that you get that kind of all of these options, or you can choose, I'm going to sacrifice my skeletons. I'm not going to have skeletons. And instead of skeletons, I'm going to get this cool buff. So I feel like it starts out very strong, but then you have more options as you go. But I'm also a little worried that Necromancer is going to feel weak at the end. Like it feels really strong in the beginning because you have all these pets. But I'm concerned about towards the end that it's not going to feel so great.
Yeah, if the pets can't really tank the bosses or what have you, it could.
I mean, on early bosses, it works really well. They will just handle things for you, and you sit back and you like cast spells and make corpses explode, and it's like no big deal. But there's only a certain amount that you seem to be able to level up your pets, and you unlock most of it by level 25. Also, at later tiers of Warlock, the Necromancer talents, you have fewer options than other classes. There are some nodes that you'll unlock where you'll only have 2 active abilities to choose between. And sometimes neither of them feel very good or impactful, so it feels like as most classes level up, they get a lot more options. And it feels like as Necromancers level up, they get options, but they don't get a lot more options. It feels like your class is kind of fixed very early on and doesn't open up into a lot of directions like the other classes do.
It makes sense, though, because, it is literally the longest returning class in the game, I think.
No. Barbarians and Necros are actually tied.
Tied, yes, yeah.
Unless you count. No, they're tied. It's
Yeah.
there's another one that's almost as often, but
because it's two and onward, and then Sorcerer technically.
Yeah, Sorcerer doesn't appear in Diablo Immortal, whereas Barbarians appear in everything from Diablo 2, Diablo 3, Immortal, and Diablo 4. Necromancers appear in Diablo 2, Diablo 3,
Immortal and 4.
Immortal and Diablo 4. So those two are the two most returning classes. But Sorcerers/Sorceress appears in Diablo 1, Diablo 2, and now Diablo 4. But since they don't appear in Immortal and they don't appear in Diablo 3, they're one less than those two. Yeah, I was thinking about this the other day for no reason.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting. I was thinking about it too, for absolutely no reason. Like we had a podcast that we talked all about Diablo lore, and by we I mean Matt. But yeah, like I think it's interesting, and I wonder if that plays into it a little bit, where like Barbarian seems though that it's sort of fleshed out a little bit more. Or
I was going to say honestly, I find myself wondering if Necromancer was just not as fully complete. I mean, because they didn't have it in the early access, and I just find myself wondering maybe they just haven't quite finished it yet.
Yeah, which is entirely possible.
That's also something that when Dan was playing the class over the weekend, he said it feels like it's not finished because you get to these later talent tiers and there are like two things, and you don't want either of them, so you're just like, okay, I guess I'll pick something here.
Fine, the best eating of the deceased. Got it.
I mean, it's like the curses tier of talents. You have two curses, and one of them is a debuff that makes monsters hit you more, and one of them's a debuff that makes monsters take damage when they hit you. And it's like, if you use either of these, neither of them feel very impactful, even if you buff them up. And it's like, I just don't want either of these. I don't want to have to press this extra button or think about where I'm casting it. I just, this doesn't matter to me. And there are a couple of talent tiers like that, where you get to them and you're just like, I played with them and it's like, wow, none of these feel like they're doing much for me. And I don't know why they're here. I don't know why I'm here. I guess I'll put my points into something way earlier that feels like it matters.
Yeah, like I would say straight up, the Barbarian, I felt like I couldn't get enough stuff. Like there was, every tier had more stuff I wanted, and I had to pick. I couldn't take them all. And with the Necromancer, what you're describing,
but Barbarian was also one of the early the earliest, most playable class, wasn't it? Too, like when Diablo 4 was at BlizzCon.
At BlizzCon, there was Sorceress, Druid, and Barbarian. Yes.
Yeah. So
the Druid was completely different. It did not feel much. It felt kind of the same. It just we're talking 4 years of iteration. I am not surprised the Druid feels different. But the Necro wasn't even no one even knew the Necro was coming until like last year.
Mm-hmm.
So
it was the last.
It was the last one announced.
The last class announced. Yeah.
So Druid's getting reworked, which would make sense because Diablo 2 Resurrected released in between then, and probably shifted how they thought about the Druid class. Barbarians being an early adoption class and being more fleshed out than some of the other playable classes right now also makes sense, because I feel like Barbarians have sort of become the poster child of Diablo, which is not a bad thing, but they definitely seem like they get the most attention because of that, because they get built first. Because they always know they're going to put a Barbarian in the game, right? Since Diablo 2 on, they know they're going to do this. The other ones are maybes, right? And then they decide later. Like, we literally haven't had a Druid in the game except for Diablo 2, and that was the expansion, and then Diablo 4. Like, there's all those other games where Druid didn't exist. Whereas, like we just pointed out with the Barbarian was just ever present, screaming, yelling, twirling, beautifully twirling in destruction.
Whirlwind is a really nice ability now. They have some good stuff with it. But to get back to what Liz is saying, I think that the basic idea of the Necromancer is pretty well laid out in that developer thing that they had last year. I just think it's a matter of some of the stuff isn't there yet.
Yeah, I think that could be true, because it really feels like they have less at higher levels. One of the things that I'm super impressed with Diablo 4 is that how much each class feels distinct from each other.
Oh, yeah.
There's nothing samey between these different classes. Each one of them plays completely differently.
Try playing a rogue after you've been playing a barbarian for a while, and you will have absolutely no idea what you're doing.
It's weird, switching up.
I got to get my head back into that space. Even, like, one of the things I was worried about was that the druid and the sorcerer would be too
Mhm.
similar because they both kind of cut channel elemental magic, but they're not. There's I mean, I won't say that they're completely alien to each other, but there is a lot of variation. The druid feels like it's not quite there yet, but it feels like it's going for I am a hybrid. I
Yeah.
can do
But
multiple stuff, like Liz suggested. Whereas the sorcerer is, I like to make these things get burned. I like light. I like ice. I like all that stuff, and I'm going to hit you with it now. And it's much more of a. It's just straight up is like a quintessential ranged caster. In a
Yeah.
weird way, I honestly feel like the sorcerer/sorceress should be able to count the wizard as one of them because it's not tremendously different from the D3 wizard.
Hmm.
There's definitely similarity. I think on purpose.
yeah.
Or
Oh yeah,
whatever.
I think there have to be, right?
Well, and like the rogue in Diablo 4, I remember hearing, some concern like Diablo 4 is not going to have a demon hunter, and I really enjoy my demon hunter. If you enjoyed a demon hunter, play a rogue because they are a demon hunter, even down to ability names. If you play a ranged type class, so you can really do all of those demon huntery things with your rogue.
Which makes sense because in lore standpoint, demon hunters and I guess Amazons as well, they all sort of like stem from that rogue 1.0, right?
Well, actually, technically speaking, rogues stem from.
Well, you know what I mean. They're all related.
Yeah, there is interrelation between Demon Hunter less directly, but more like I survived, and then this person found me and taught me how to do stabbing and shooting. A lot of shooting and turrets. I love turrets. So yeah, there's a certain amount of similarity there.
I've kind of sunk us into talking about Diablo 4 for the entire podcast again.
I don't think anybody's going to complain. Trust me.
No one was going to stop us.
I do want to ask you, Joe, since we have been talking forever, what do you hope is coming to classes in Diablo 4? Particularly, I know you're into playing a druid. What do you want to see?
I think I'm going to be getting what I wanted. And the one thing that I was going to look for was sort of the jack of all trades, right? It was I like playing hybrid classes because I like being able to adapt on the fly to situations. And I love, as much as I love the druid in Diablo 2 is very much you pick a path and that is it. There is no in between. So now it sounds like instead of just being stuck with that, you are actually being rewarded, or maybe reward is the wrong word. You're being encouraged to play more of a hybrid, more reactionary class, which also thematically seems to fit what they were, at least from what I am gathering, the intention of the story for why the druids dealing with stuff again, right? Like that was what the druids were always supposed to be, calling upon the power of, nature or the world itself to, adapt to any situation, because that's how they were always portrayed. So I'm getting that, it seems like, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to spec your druid, you can, sit at range and hurl tornadoes, literal tornadoes at your enemies. And, when you're like, hey, I'm tired of hurling tornadoes, you can just shapeshift into a werewolf and claw their face off. Yeah, or you can shapeshift into a werewolf and bite them and poison them with your bite. So, I mean, options are infinite.
Yeah, and the thing about the druid I kept noticing was that you could play in a definitive, I want to play my character this way, or you could basically just improv it. Because you can do your range stuff, and when stuff gets in close to you, when most casters would be running away and trying to figure out how to get back to range, you just turn into a werewolf and slash at everything in front of you. Yeah. So it's definitely a more fluid response class than it was in D2. Yeah, you had talent trees and stuff that you were just aimed in one direction. This is not that.
I had a talent where my werewolf would dash to someone if I attacked. Like if I did my claw attack, it would dash to my target, so I could zoom all over the battlefield slashing at someone. And if I'm I don't want to be in range of this bad thing right now, I could just change my target and just dash over to them by trying to claw them. And it felt really fast paced and really fun. I enjoy being a werewolf, apparently.
Yeah.
Don't we all?
Yeah. I mean, some days you just feel like a werewolf and you want to solve your problems. You want to solve your problems by clawing them in the face.
Diablo 2 has werewolves. Diablo 4 also has werewolves. But yeah, I think at this point though, we're pretty much done. we have finished the podcast.
Indeed. So I'm going to go ahead and do the thing, because did you know that Blizzard Watch is made possible due to the generous contributions at patreon.com/BlizzardWatch. Your continued support means that this podcast and community is able to thrive and grow. Blizzard Watch supporters enjoy exclusive benefits like early access to the podcast, better chance at having your question answered on our podcast of the queue, and an ads-free site experience.
Thank you very much, Joe, and thank you to Liz as well for helping me talk about Diablo for like a solid 45 minutes. I do want to say this, like before we move on. I do want to say that I've been really pleasantly surprised by the non-barbarian classes. Like they're not bad. Like I could see if I couldn't play a barbarian for some reason.
That's high praise.
Yeah, like if I couldn't play a bard for some reason, I could see playing one of them. Necro is my least favorite, but not because it's bad, because I just don't like the motif. I'm just. There's a lot of bones and blood and stuff. And,
yeah, Hot Topic is so 2000.
Yeah, it's just there is a lot of that happening, and it's just not really much. But the druid, like I said, like Liz is correct in that it does feel kind of squishy, and I do think that that's got something to do with the fact that you can't go and unlock your special ability. But they still felt fun. The rogue felt really fun. Like I really liked playing the rogue, more so than I've ever liked playing a rogue before. And the sorcerer. Cool. Well, I played the sorceress, and in my head, it's always the sorceress. I never say sorcerer to myself. But that was another one where I was like, yeah, wow. I mean, I don't like casters, but if you're going to be a caster, this is a good one to be, because you can just rock up on people and go like, hey, how about I just make everything be fire? Okay, yeah. For my next trick, fireballs that I'm going to throw at everybody, because that fire thing I just did buffed my fireballs and made them like no mana. So yeah, more fireballs, just going to burn everything. It is a lot of fun. So yeah, but you guys, gonna ask a final question before we go. You'd asked Joe a question about what he wants to see in Diablo 4. So Liz, kind of on the same page. What do you think? Like when we're talking about this game next year, what do you think we'll be talking about? What do you think is the thing that'll be keeping us playing this game if we are?
I hope it will be the story of the game, because after playing through the first act in the beta, I am really curious as to what happens next. Where are we going from here? And Blizzard has already said that they're planning on doing a seasonal approach, and every season they're going to roll out new content, like new zones and stories. So I'm going to be really excited if they really follow through on that, and like every season we get a new zone to explore and a new storyline to play. I would be thrilled if that happens.
Okay, Joe?
I don't know if I can add anything more, because I think if they do what they say they're going to do, we're just going to have plenty to talk about for a while about this game, because if they keep adding content and they keep doing that, we're gonna have a good fun time for a long time.
Yeah. I will say that one of the things I do like is all the ways that this game feels like a Diablo game, in both in terms of gameplay and story, but at the same time, there are big differences. And I like that there are big differences. I like that there's stuff that you're like, oh, okay, I didn't expect that. So yeah, I'm hoping that they can keep that going, where you get to, like, I believe last week Liz said that it felt like Sanctuary was part of the game, was like actually almost a character. And I agree with that. And I'd like to see what we find out about the character of Sanctuary after a year of playing. But everybody, this has been the Blizzard Watch podcast. Thank you very much for being here with us. And we will be back next week.